On a special edition of Nightline, classroom tragedy. At least 20 young children and 6 adults shot and killed inside a Connecticut elementary school. The worst shooting of its kind in history. We're on the ground with parents, students, and teachers as a town and a nation grieves.
The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old.
Plus, the heroes. Stories of bravery from inside the school, including the young teacher who promised her first graders they'd live to see Christmas.
I wanted them to know someone loved them, and I wanted that to be one of the last things they heard. Not the gunfire in the hallway. It's so horrible.
And the shooter, a 20-year-old armed with an assault rifle and 2 handguns. His mother among the dead. The latest breaking details on who he is and why he did it.
From the global resources of ABC News, with Terry Moran and Bill Weir in New York City, and Cynthia McFadden in Newtown, Connecticut, this is a special edition of Nightline. Tragedy at the elementary school.
Good evening. I'm Cynthia McFadden, and tonight we join you from a community just beginning to process a great tragedy that unfolded here this morning. A little while ago, I was just down the street where 1,000 people gathered inside and outside St. Rose Catholic Church here in Newtown, Connecticut, to mourn the loss of 26 people, including 20 school children, almost between the ages of 5 and 10 years old, shot and killed in their elementary school. Classrooms this morning. Schools in this town are part of the draw for people who live here with some of the highest test scores in the state. It's the kind of place parents move to for the sake of their children's school. ABC's Dan Harris has been at the scene since early today. Dan?
Cynthia, good evening. It all started just a little ways behind this volunteer fire department down the road at a suburban elementary school, which tonight is in the history books for the worst of all possible reasons. And this town, which one parent today described as the safest place in America, is in total shock. 90 minutes into the school day on a bright winter morning here, police got a call from the Sandy Hook Elementary School.
Sandy Hook School. Caller is indicating she thinks there's someone shooting in the building.
At around 9:30, the shooter, 20-year-old Adam Lanza, a former student in the local schools, shown here as a teenager, had barged in. According to police, he was heavily armed, coated in body armor, and ready to kill.
We heard all this racket at our classroom, and we were like all scared. So then we heard them say, "Go in your cubbies."
There were more than 600 children from kindergarten through 4th grade inside.
I was in the art room. We were doing art. We heard gunshots, like 20.
It was really scary. Teachers just said, sit down inside the corner and be quiet.
Calls went out to police even as shots were still being fired, and within 5 to 10 minutes, tactical teams with long guns drawn swarmed the school, a stark contrast against the backdrop of this bucolic, woodsy neighborhood.
Reports that the teacher saw 2 shadows running past the building, past the gym, which would be rear high base. Near shooting.
Okay, these units in the school, I got bodies here.
Petrified students and teachers looked for safe places to hide. One teacher locking her children in a bathroom as police combed the building looking for the shooter.
Newtown police, immediately upon arrival, entered the school and began a complete active shooter search of the building. That included checking every door, every crack, every crevice, every portion of that school.
We heard screaming, and then the police came in. It's like, is he in here? Then he ran out.
8-year-old Alexis Wasik was in her 3rd grade classroom at the time.
We heard like an ambulance and a police officer come, and everybody was a little scared, crying, and I felt actually a little sick, and I felt like I was going to throw up.
Were kids crying and screaming?
Yeah, kids were crying, not really like screaming, but they're all huddling together, and they felt so sick.
Teachers led the students single file from the schoolhouse to a nearby fire station.
We got in a line and we had to close our eyes. And we all put our hands on other people's shoulders, and then our teacher held the first person's hand and she let us out.
Parents were alerted by text message, and a frantic parade of them arrived at the fire station hoping to find their children alive.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I mean, I don't even... When I heard, I started crying.
Alexis's parents were among the lucky. Her mom says when she arrived at the firehouse, Alexis was already with her father.
He had her in his arms and, and I'm crying. And so she just goes, Mama, I'm okay. I'm here.
The rampage and the evacuation all happened in a flash, but we wouldn't know the full scope of the horror for hours.
The shooter is deceased. Suffice it to say the scene is secure.
By 10:30, President Obama was being briefed on the situation, and schools throughout the area were on lockdown. Police were surrounding a second crime scene, the shooter's mother's home nearby. At around noon, the horrifying numbers were announced. ABC News learned that Lanza had killed 27 people, most of them children. At the local hospital, they were bracing for an onslaught, but they only got 3 patients, 2 of whom died.
A number of us imagined what it must have felt like on 9/11 when there were people bracing for scores of injured and they didn't arrive.
At the firehouse, where students were still gathered waiting for their parents, we met another mother whose children go to a nearby school. She told us she was here to support her friends and to put off picking up her own children because she didn't want to tell them about this massacre.
We're not picking them up because this is the last 2 hours of their life that they're going to be a kid.
I know there's not a parent in America who doesn't feel the same overwhelming grief that I do.
Shortly after 3 in the afternoon, the president addressed the nation.
The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old.
Not long after that, police announced that Lanza had shot his mother, who was believed to have worked at the school at some point, at her home before he then went and stormed the school.
We need to establish identity. We need to document the entire scene, and simply stated, we need to answer every single question surrounding exactly how and why this incident occurred.
Tonight at the Capitol building in Washington, flags lowered to half-staff. While back in Newtown, true to the grim and all too familiar script of these mass shootings, a candlelight vigil. All day long as we watched the drama unfold here, adding to the shock in this community, the fact that this is such an unlikely venue for violence. A small, sleepy town with a population of fewer than 30,000, the kind of bucolic New England place where people move precisely for the schools and the safety.
Real. It's like, should I be pinched to see if it really is real? And it's just heart-wrenching.
Feels like a dream, and a bad dream.
It's a nightmare. It feels like a nightmare.
And for those lucky enough to be reunited with their children tonight, a wake-up call.
And you count your blessings every day for what you have.
Alexis, I'm really glad you're okay. I'm really glad you're okay. You're pretty tough.
You are too.
You're pretty tough. She is a great kid, and she's had a very tough day. And tonight, ABC News has learned that the FBI is interviewing friends and family of the gunman, not only here in Connecticut, but also in New Jersey and in Massachusetts, as they try to go about answering the big burning question, why? What was his motive? Cynthia?
Thanks to you, Dan Harris, reporting. And next up, heroes in the midst of terror. The brave teacher who locked her first graders in the classroom bathroom and promised them they would make it to Christmas.
No, we just have to be absolutely quiet. And I said, there are bad guys out there now. We need to wait for the good guy.